Time once again for the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, Soren Petro with you as we project the 53-man roster. We're going to take a look at it. All the free agency moves, for the most part, are probably done. Draft is done. What the roster is going to look like. We've got some players, some of the obvious ones, like a Patrick Mahomes. We're not going to discuss Patrick Mahomes. We're going to give you who the ones are that we think are absolute locks and then discuss what the last couple of roster spots are. All the specialists figure to be the same, so we've really got 50 spots minus all the regulars that we're going to fill here. What your 53 will look like, we've never missed. We've never been wrong when we've done this. Looking forward to doing it again here on the Red, Gold, and Bold.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We appreciate it as we get things started here. Guys, the 53-man roster taking a run at it. Real quick, what did you learn from this? I will tell you that the biggest takeaway was usually I'm at like 57, 58 trying to figure out who's going to be cut. I had to find guys.
Yeah.
I was at 50 and I had to go find 3 guys to make this roster. That was the thing that jumped at me. Jeff, anything jump at you going through this?
The same thing. Pretty light. Rare that it happens that way, but yeah, I felt like I was getting ready to put some flyers on people's windshields, see if they want to play football for the team. I was like, good Lord. I'm like, giving some jobs to some guys who are some questionable players. So it should be an interesting training camp when it comes to doing this exercise again.
I love it. Sam, anything jump at you? Can you beat that? Flyers and windows?
I mean, even if I agreed with that opinion, which I do, I couldn't top the wording of it.
Yeah.
I actually think it was this way last year. I mean, I don't think it's this anomaly. Like, this is going to continue to move towards the trend as you're going to pay a quarterback $63 million per year.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, it's you got to have cheap guys on the back end of your roster, and you're going to need a program for a few guys. Like if you parachute in for week 1 of the Chiefs, you're going to be like, who's this guy? There'll be a couple of interesting ones that are there. All right. We said we're going to take all the obvious ones off the board. And so, the starting offensive line is on, all the kind of things. We're going to start with quarterback. We've got Patrick Mahomes and Justin Fields, both making the roster. The question is, are they joined by anybody? Jeff, you want to do the honors and tell us if you've got Nussmeier or Chris Oladokun? Anyone
or both.
Or both.
There's,
yes,
there's room. I don't see. I think both those players wind up on the practice squad unless somehow Nussmeier lights it up in preseason. But it feels like this is a perfect place to stick a quarterback and give yourself some more roster versatility. It's hard to look if either one of these guys are playing, Oladokun or Garrett Nussmeier. You've got huge problems. So I think they're going to go into the season with 2 quarterbacks, with Justin Fields being the primary backup.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Not what I've got. Sam?
Yeah, I've got Nussmeier making it for a couple of reasons. One is the topic that led off this conversation, which is I've got space for him on this roster. Like, I don't feel like I'm making a tough cut to make space for Garrett Nussmeier. Second reason is Patrick Mahomes is coming off of an ACL surgery coming into the season. And so if you get in a spot where he doesn't start week one, you're obviously going to be keeping a third quarterback. Even if he does start week one, I still think you're, at least if you're smart, going to have in the back of your mind, is he going to make it through a healthy season? Like, that's a real thing with guys coming off of this serious of an injury. And I think you'd rather have a guy who went through training camp with you, who you feel like knows a little bit about your offense, as opposed to just bringing somebody off the street. And Chris Oladokun, I think, proved last year he's not that guy.
And I think also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Fields hadn't exactly, now he's learning a new offense and everything, but so's Garrett Nussmeier, but he wasn't exactly sharp, right?
Fields?
Yeah.
Fields in the summer was not an impressive quarterback in now he is learning a new system. He's learning wide receivers. I mean, it's his introduction to everything that's new to him all at once. Let me clarify why he wasn't impressed. There's a lot of times in a summer camp where you just got to take a risk and throw the ball. And his inclination his entire career has been to tuck the ball. That just doesn't pop in a summer camp. It's a passing camp. Like, there's times we're standing there watching and saying, just throw the ball. I don't care if it gets picked, just throw the ball, because that's what the intention of the camp is.
And Andy Reid doesn't care if it gets picked. Andy Reid wants you to throw interceptions. He wants you to see how far you can go. Can I make this? Can I not make it? That's what it's all there for. And so, yeah, I think that's probably a little bit frustrating. And I think I'm not going to say it opens the door for Garrett Nussmeier, but it has you looking longer at him. But I do think Jeff's right. I mean, I think if you decide you need the roster spot, I mean, he lasted all the way to the 7th round for some reason. I don't know who's going to come swooping in and being like, well, we're going to carry him.
Especially if this roster does not. I mean, that'll be a sign to somebody else. If Andy Reid decides that this quarterback is not worth it, I think that your chances increase of being able to bring him back.
Yeah, but it does raise an interesting point, though, about the doomsday scenario if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt again or is not able to function at a high level for whatever reason, that these are your two options. A guy not impressed, a guy who's never played in this league.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's talk about the running back. We've all got Kenneth Walker and Emmett Johnson, the draft pick, making it. Sam, you want to lead us off here? Where do you go with the rest of the running backs? How many you got?
Yeah, one of the reasons I liked this exercise, and look, I think it was a couple weeks ago that we actually graded whether positions were better or worse, but some of those were, like running back, so bad last year that you just looked at the top of it and said better immediately. This causes you to look all the way down the further the depth chart, beyond the depth, what you're going to anticipate being the opening depth chart. And it's thin beyond Kenneth Walker and Emmett Johnson. I've got Amari DiMercato making it and Brashard Smith making it. And I don't think those guys are locks going into training camp, particularly Brashard Smith. I look at a guy that was told to gain 15 to 20 pounds in the offseason, and from eyesight, which isn't at all the best. I would never be the guy at the carnival judging somebody's weight. He just didn't look like he had he had added on 20 pounds to me. And I still have questions over who's going to be the short yardage back, which people get tired of hearing me saying it, but I feel like I'm going to be saying it for 17 weeks at this point.
Yeah, it looks that way. So you do. So who do you?
I've got DiMercato and Brashard Smith both making it. So I've got 4 guys on the team. They've been impressed with Emmitt Smith's kid, EJ. I think from a special team standpoint too. And I think this is a spot, especially when you look at the wide receiver room, where they're going to look at kick returner for some help in the running back room.
That's where I've got Brashard Smith and DiMercato making it, is because I think both of them are candidates to be kick returners. And so I think, that may be Brashard Smith's ticket onto the roster, is his ability to return kicks, because I'm not sure that, that was kind of, to me, that was the whole reason they drafted him in the first place, right? Like that's when you heard him talk, it seemed like they drafted a kick returner. Oh, by the way, we're going to list him as a running back. And I did think he had a pretty good last appearance, right? I thought he showed pretty well there. So I think he makes it, but I mean, you're cutting a 7th round pick if you do cut him. So if Jaden Ott or EJ Smith are impressive, or God forbid a high quality fullback falls out of the sky with a cut someplace else, he could be a casualty that way as well. So, but I've got the same 4. Jeff?
The same for a lot of the same reasons. And I'll throw one more in there, that if they're going to be running the football more this season, that you have to factor in the possibilities of more injuries. I do feel like there's a lot of redundancy in the skill sets here. And so maybe there's a situation where you can actually figure out, who does what over the course of the season. But the return game is a big factor for me. But yeah, I think they brought in DeMarcado feeling like he could help them in a lot of ways. And I don't think they want to give up on Brashard Smith. That's the only reason I think he's on my list, aside from the return potential.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there just aren't many big backs out there, but they could use one if they could find it. That's for sure. All right. Wide receiver, Sam. How many you got for the wide receivers? We've got 3 that we think are locks: Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Tyquan Thornton, who they gave a 2-year contract to keep out of free agency. Who do you add to that trio?
I've got him keeping 11. Why not?
That's right. At least 4 more, I thought.
I walked right into that. Sam's perpetual bitch about the number of wideouts.
7 receivers. Yeah.
I will keep this to one stat. There's 6, 7, and 8 wide receivers they kept at the 53-man roster last year combined for 3 catches for 25 yards, which was Jalen Royals, Nico Remigio, and Jason Brownlee. 3 catches for 25 yards, and those 3 guys occupied a spot on the initial roster. I have them keeping 6, and I think you can get away with 5, but I've got to keep them 6 with Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Tyquan Thornton, like you mentioned, and then Cyrus Allen, Jalen Royals, and Nico Remigio. And I definitely do not think Nico Remigio's spot is guaranteed, because I think they'd like to improve at kick returner. And if they do, I think they'll keep somebody else here at wide receiver.
Okay. How about you, Jeff? Where are you going with the receiver room?
Same 6, and this is one of the most worrisome spots on this roster right now because I'm not crazy about the group.
The most. There's not. I mean, what's even second?
Yeah, it's true. Corner, you can make a case for if you wonder what the lane's going to be and bringing L'Jarius Sneed in. But yeah, this group is very underwhelming. And this was an area I really was thinking, man, they've got to find somebody else to come in here and help them, because when you think about the last 2 guys Sam named, I mean, it's just, I know Cyrus Allen's creating some buzz with his route running, but you're not expecting a rookie to come here and do a whole lot given what Jalen Royals did last year. And we don't know what Jalen Royals is. And so you're really relying on 3 players to carry your offense, and one of them just got out of jail, and the other one was wearing a yellow jersey all throughout the offseason. And so they've got to make a move here somehow, or find some way to improve it, because I just don't see where this group on paper, man, 6 is. I don't know how you get to 5. To be honest with you, 5 would be like, man, what are we doing? How are we going to play football with this group?
So you've got the number 2 guy wearing yellow, number 1 guy wearing orange.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Sam's on a heater tonight. I'll say that. Yeah, I got the same 6. I think Remigio makes it to as part of the kick return equation. Dave Tobe seems to love Nico Remigio, so I think he's the guy. I mean, I think Jalen Royals, I mean, we'll see what we see up in St. Joe. I think he gets it just because they got a 4th rounder invested in him, and size-wise, he's a little bit bigger. So I think they stick with him. I don't see him cutting Cyrus Allen. I suppose it could happen, but after that, like, I mean, there is no Justin Ross. I mean, it's the same guys. Jason Brownlee's still there. Jimmy Holiday.
You're gonna see buzz at this position though, Soren, because there's not great talent down the depth chart. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to see certain guys getting the occasional snap with Patrick Mahomes, and people are going to start buzzing about them the same way they did with Jason Brownlee last year. And I'll throw out one name that had a good summer was the Andrew Armstrong guy. He's a second-year guy, undrafted out of Arkansas, didn't play last year, got cut by Miami, had a training camp, was on Detroit's practice squad, got cut by them, and he had a good summer. I'm just saying there's going to be a guy like that, because they don't have enough to cycle in, that's going to get the occasional snap at the 1, play a lot with the 2s, and get a bunch of buzz. And I just think we need to caution ourselves now. It's a product of where their depth chart is more than it is a product of certain talent rising beyond expectation.
Yeah, you mentioned also, I'll point out here, you said, I don't even know what's second. Like, I don't know that tight end isn't second. If we want to just group this
there too.
Could be.
Because I've seen enough of the Noah Gray, Jared Wiley experiment. I mean, I listen. I don't have any hellfire and brimstone to throw at the front office because, well, I can't believe you didn't address this situation, because they had a lot of needs. There's only so many picks. There's only so many dollars into the cap. Every year we're going to have a spot or two probably where you look at this team and go, okay, they're short here and they're short here. 15's got to make up for that. And I don't want it always to be on offense. If I'm Patrick Mahomes, I'll make up for it. Like, we'll score some extra points, be thin at linebacker, be thin over there somewhere. But I'll just go from the receivers to the tight ends. Like, I don't get it. Like, I do think that this at some point has got to become a priority before Travis Kelce is done. Like, I don't, if Travis Kelce, every year he's more likely to not make it through the year. I mean, that's what happens when you get old. You get hurt, right? Like, not necessarily when you get to be as old as I am and you get hurt just getting out of the way of somebody on a plane, but things start to just break, and they're on borrowed time with him. And if he goes down, couple that with the wide receiver position that is not deep, right? Like, it's Rashee Rice, and you're hoping they've got a new plan for Tyquan Thornton, and the new coach is going to get more out of Xavier Worthy. Like, Travis Kelce, and it's scary. The combination of the two is really scary. By the way, since I'm spitting out about the tight ends, I actually have two tight ends in addition to Kelce and Noah Gray, who we have as the locks. I've got Brenningstool and Wiley making it. And I'm going to tell you, Brenningstool, both of them are guys that I'm like,
the same guy.
I got to find 53. And so I know they're going to have at least 3. I think they'll go for 4 in this situation, but I mean, I don't love it. Like, I'm not bragging about that, but I've got 4: Kelce, Gray, Brenningstool, and Wiley. And Wiley was the guy I had making it last. Have you seen anything? Has anybody seen anything out of that guy?
No, but I haven't seen a thing out of Brenningstool either.
I'm just going off past hype. Like, I'm going to give you a name of a guy that I've never.
There was hype.
There was when they signed him. They paid a little extra money to get him signed. When he was coming out, he was one of the higher rated guys to not be drafted in the 25 draft class. So that is the only thing that I'm going on to put him on here.
Yeah, look, I'm in the same boat with you, and I thought about going 4 tight ends. I kept it to 3, the usual suspects. Jake Brenningstool, to me, like Sam said, I just don't know what he is, and I don't know if there's enough there to say, okay, you can take a job from somebody who's been around for a couple of years already. But I don't get it either. And maybe it's just too much of a belief in Travis Kelce and too much of a belief in Patrick Mahomes' ability to work with other receivers who aren't superstars. But this feels just like with receiver, like a problem waiting to get worse. And I just don't understand, especially because, again, when you're talking about running the football more, I thought they would add a bigger body player at some point at this position. You got the same 3 guys who can't block, and 2 of them either can't play or have gotten to the point where if they can play, they haven't shown it.
Listen, I recognize that there are not a lot of tight ends on the field. It's not a position where there's 5 of them, like you're talking about offensive linemen. But do you know how many tight ends they've drafted since Travis Kelce?
Well, they took Gray and Wiley.
Yeah. Since they took Travis Kelce.
Yes, since they took Kelce, how many other tight ends have they drafted? You've mentioned 2 of them. Is that it, or you think there's one more?
Well, Demetrius Harris was an undrafted guy, right?
Right. Don't forget about the great James O'Shaughnessy, who they took back in 2015.
Yeah.
That's been their investment, and they actually every now and then get kind of into this playing multiple tight ends, and it's always been this collection of let's turn a basketball player into a tight end. They have not been able to find anybody else who could put up. Noah Gray had one good kind of little stretch a couple of years ago, and that's been it. Otherwise, they haven't gotten anything from the tight end position. And I will give them a little bit of grace here in the sense that, like, the tight ends went shockingly high in the draft. Like,
a blocking tight end went with in the second round this year.
I was looking at him. We were doing our Dynasty Football League rookie draft. And so we're drafting 56 skill position players from this past draft class. So we literally are taking all of them, plus some guys that weren't even drafted. And I'm looking through it and I'm like, this guy went in the second round. He had 18 catches for like 184 yards. And I'm like they obviously they're all big blocking guys and everyone's clearly wanting to come around to running the ball. And the Chiefs, what I'm saying is I get it. I get why they didn't draft a guy because I think they were all kind of being overdrafted, but it's something that's just compounding the problem of not finding somebody better earlier, in previous years to this. So, all right, Sam, we haven't gotten who you're keeping, have we?
Yeah, I've just got 3: Kelsey, Gray, and Wiley. I considered a fourth for the same reason. This was up for debate in my 53rd guy on the roster, but I was debating between Trey Watson and a position actually I ended up choosing on defense instead.
Okay. We got the line of scrimmages we want to get to. We'll do it after you hear from our friends at Gay and Asphalt and Concrete. Your parking lot says a lot about your business. Cracks, potholes, faded striping, and damaged concrete can create safety concerns and leave the wrong impression with customers. Gann Asphalt and Concrete helps Kansas City businesses protect their properties with asphalt paving, seal coating, crack filling, parking lot striping, concrete work, and repairs. Their experienced crews deliver quality workmanship and dependable service on every project. Whether you need routine maintenance or a complete parking lot overhaul, Gann is ready to help you. Get started today with a free estimate at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. Italian Delight was the first restaurant to bring true New York-style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago. They sell whole pies or pizza by the slice, or enjoy their classic strombolis, calzones, and sausage rolls. Sandwich lovers, check out their lineup of hot and cold subs, the combo, the meatball, or the Philly cheesesteak, just to name a few. And don't forget the pasta. Their famous lasagna and classic chicken Alfredo always hit the spot. And if you're hungry for lunch, check out their daily lunch specials, starting at under $10. Italian Delight can even cater your next work function or party. Dine in, carry out, or delivery, it's Italian Delight. Located just 3 minutes east of Kansas Speedway at 8145 State Ave in KCK. Check out the menu and order online at ItalianDelightKS.com. Kansas City's own Italian Delight. All right, let's turn our attention to the offensive line. We put the 5 starters on: Josh Simmons, Kingsley Suamataia, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Jalen Moore. We assume is the starter right now. I think at $15 million, he's going to make the roster. So we've got those 5. Sam, where do you want to add to that? How many are you adding to that?
I've got 4, and this is also a spot where I think you could maybe keep a 10th guy. They have kept 10 before. So I've got the other 2 guys who are in a perceived battle going into camp with Jalen Moore, which is Esapole and Khalil Benson, and then 2 interior guys with Mike Caliendo, who can play guard and center, and Hunter Norzad.
Okay. I have exactly.
Okay, I was just going to say that cuts Chu Godric, who was on the roster for part of last year, cuts CJ Hansen, who's been cut before, but also been part of the roster before.
Yeah, I've got the exact same 9, and I did not really have a hard time getting there. To me, it was pretty easy to land. Like I wouldn't mind if they moved on from Mike Caliendo and went with a cheaper version of him. And we'll see if there's an offensive lineman, because they've done a pretty good job of finding guys. Whether it's I'm trying to look at some of the undrafted guys. Josh Thompson ends up being a guy that would make it. I mean, you say $400,000 or $500,000 over what Mike Caliendo brings to the table, but again, I have plenty of spots. Wasn't hard to get there. Jeff, how many you got?
I have 10. I have 10 because this is like the only spot outside of running back where I felt like I'm actually not going to go short. There were so many. I think if I didn't go 10 here, I would have had 23 offensive players on my 53-man roster. So I actually went with 10 with the same tackles, Esapole and Khalil Benson back on Josh Simmons and Jalen Moore. And then I added CJ Hansen and Mike Caliendo at guard and Hunter Norzad at center, backing up Humphrey. But again, I literally could have easily gone with 9 dude, but I got to throw a body in there somewhere.
Yeah, and I we'll see what Khalil Benson can do with the pads on. That could be a real okay, now I see why he wasn't drafted.
Yeah, that matters.
Yeah, it's a big part of the equation, and maybe this will look different. But yeah, that was pretty easy to get to, and I think they're in good shape, right? Like I think this is the best spot.
This is definitely one of their stronger runs.
This is the strength of the team.
Which by the way, it ought to be.
It's
expensive.
Yeah.
It is expensive. It's expensive in terms of if you draft cap.
Draft stock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But any room with Patrick Mahomes is the best room in the building.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. All right, let's go to the D line. Breaking it up. Are we breaking it up D tackle or DN or just all D line? Just to throw them all in together. Sam, I know you put them all together, right?
I just have 9, but I can separate them here at the top of my head. I mean, at edge, I've got Karlaftis, Gelati, R. Mason Thomas,
which we put down, by the way.
Go ahead and say our locks first.
Yeah, Karlaftis, Gelati, and R. Mason Thomas we think are givens. Amongst the defensive tackles, Chris Jones, Peter Woods, Omar Norman Lott, and Kairos Tonga we think are givens. So we've got 7 on the D line that we think are absolute no brainers.
Yeah, and by the way, this was the other position along with running back. What I mentioned earlier that when we did the better or worse about positions, I just went and said it's going to be hard to be worse than last year. This group is better. They put draft capital into it, but when you go through it, like they're much deeper than they were last year at this position. I mean, those 7 you mentioned, how many locks did we have last year? Like we were counting like Mike Pennell, I think maybe among that group, who by the way did not make it at a training camp. He was kind of the stunning cut there. But my last 2, I have 2 other guys on there. I have Felix Anudike-Uzomah because I don't think they can quit a first round pick. And then
wait a minute. Let's save the you got one more guy. Do you have Felix on yours, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, I have him too for all the reasons Sam said. To me, I think there are 8 guys that are no brainers, and I literally was learning about who the hell these other guys are, and doing this process. And I think somebody will probably emerge. To Sam's point,
you guys say yours first here, then.
Okay, I think. Oh, interesting. I think somebody will emerge. I'll go ahead and give you my guy. I think somebody will emerge and play kind of well and become the camp darling. We'll see he gets a sack against the backup quarterback, or he makes a couple of tackles, or late in a preseason game.
Darius Harris did that like 4 years ago as a linebacker and made the team because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be something like that, but I literally have no idea who that person is. None. I have none. So I took the heaviest guy of the bunch.
Literally, you just looked at weight?
Literally, I took Cole Brevard as my 9th for another defensive tackle figure. The big boys, they went out and got Tonga. He's 346 pounds from Texas. I was like, okay, I don't. They've got like 5 undrafted free agents, college free agents. Then they've got one guy who bounced around Jacksonville's practice squad, the kid from Oklahoma. And then they've got 2 other guys that have bounced around like 3 teams' practice squads. Like that's what you're choosing from. And I think they would normally like at least 9, if not 10 defensive linemen. And normally I'd be like, well, which guy can beat out Felix Anudike-Uzomah? He's on the team. He's on the team because they're not cutting him for one of these guys.
Yeah. And playing a lot, probably. Playing meaningful downs.
He could if he can
stay healthy. Great time to be him.
You see, I've got a section on the spreadsheet that says injured. I could slide him down there right now, and we could just get to it. I guess just advance our way. But yeah, Cole Brevard made it for me because he's 346 pounds.
Yeah. I went with Ethan Downs just because I was thinking, if you're going to add depth, go with another edge player. Partly because what you just said about FAU. But I just don't know if there's another defensive tackle who to me makes sense as far as potential goes. And so I don't know anything about Ethan Downs. I just know that I need 9 defensive linemen, and he's the one that makes the most sense right now because he plays a position that I like.
So Jeff accidentally, I think, picked the right name out of the hat here.
Good. So you think he's the guy?
Yeah, I've got Ethan Downs. And the reason is because Dave Tove loves him on special teams.
Okay.
And if this is a roster, when you look at it, for the reasons we've mentioned, Dave Tobe's going to get some picks. because I don't think they're going to have a bunch of guys who are hard to cut, and therefore they're going to look at Dave and say, "You lost Leo Chenal. Any of these guys could help you out." And he's going to say, "Yeah, give me Ethan Downs."
Okay. That's a pretty good reason for it. I like that. Let's go to the linebacker spot where we had only Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil listed as the guys that are no-brainers. Sam, who'd you add on to those two?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of our people in the comments right now might be saying Jeff Boss is a no-brainer, in which we'd have to remind him the Chiefs were completely out of playoff contention, and he could not get on the field until the last week of the season. Against the Titans, he could not get defensive snaps. And so that's why I don't think the three of us said we'll all have him on the team, I'm sure, but we couldn't say it's 100%. But I've got Boss on the team, Cochran on the team, Cooper McDonald on the team. And then I just want to throw a wild card in there. This guy actually set out in the summer because of an injury. But he's a guy I know that they're high on. And undrafted rookie, I'm going to say Wesley Basaint is going to be my 53rd guy that's going to make it.
Wesley Basaint, Bissainthe.
Yeah, and look, I think people might say, well, Cole Christensen, there's annual proof that you can cut Cole Christensen and get him back on the practice squad because they do it every year. And by the way, he's really well liked in the locker room. Like, that's a good guy to have in your room. I've talked to him many times. I think he's a great personality in the room. He's actually got a leadership type for a guy who's a practice squad player. But like I said, when you actually do the math of it, which this is math as much as the depth chart, the proof is there that you can get him back.
Okay. Jeff, where'd you go?
I had Bassa on it, even though Sam makes some great points about him, but I just feel like there's nobody else in that third linebacker role who makes sense right now. Maybe that's Cooper McDonald, who was a surprise last year. He's on there as well. Jack Cochran is one of Dave Tobe's favorite guys. And I actually went with Cole Christensen, although I went back and forth with Basaint for the same reasons. I've heard a lot of buzz about him, but I also feel like, first of all, I don't like the idea of having 6 linebackers. They had 5 last year, and I think that's a good number because only 2 are going to play on a regular basis. So I think there's a little overkill here. But again, I just feel like there's just so many slots where it's just hard to find talent. And a lot of these guys have been around. A lot of them have value as leadership type, locker room type guys. And that meant more to me than having a Jake Brenningstool on the roster or, somebody else who's not as proven. And so I got 6.
I looked long and hard at Wesley Basaint as well, but I think there's probably a pretty good chance he makes the roster and that it's time to move on from like Jack Cochran or Cole Christensen and get a little bit younger and a little bit cheaper. And so I think that's a real possibility. But I just went with the chalk. Jeffrey Bossa will make it, Cooper McDonald and Jack Cochran. And I only went with 5 that are making it. So, but I think Basaint's got a really good chance.
You had 26 on offense, though, didn't you, Soren?
Yes, I did. So I've got to have 20.
Jeff and I just had 25 on offense. Yeah, so we've got 25.
Yeah. So I'm 26 offense, 24 defense. So, all right. That takes us to cornerback, which we put 4. We're breaking down corners. We put 2 corners, 4 overall in the second day. Mansour Lane and Noel Williams are our 2 locks. Who did you add to those 2 in the cornerbacks, Sam?
I added Christian Fulton. I added L'Jarius Sneed. And then I've got 2 tweeners, guys who I think are purely nickels who could play safety, which is Chris Rowland-Wallace and Jaden Kennedy.
Okay, so
you cut Kohu, whatever he is.
Yeah, Kadur Kohu. Yeah.
You cut him. Okay. And so you put Rowland-Wallace over there at corner.
First guy off, by the way. I mean, there were several iterations of this where I had him, but he really only plays a slot, and I think they like Rowland-Wallace there, and I think they like Kennedy there. So that's why I've got those 2 instead. And I want to point out they signed him before they drafted Jaden Kennedy, and that was the draft pick. Like Boss the year before, they said this wasn't necessarily the plan, but we considered him around earlier, and suddenly he's still there. We picked him. Okay. Jeff, where'd you go?
I actually have 6 true corners. or nickel outside type guys. After Delaney Williams, Fulton, and Snead, and then I actually had Kennedy and I had Kohu just because, again, I had spot for him, had space for him. I don't know if he'll play a whole lot, but the Kohu that would be. But and then safety, I had Gilman and Connor, and I had Hicks and Roland Wallace as a safety, who I like him probably more as a safety than a corner.
All right, settle down.
But 10 DBs is a lot. I don't really love that number either. But it's just they don't have anybody on offense who I think the players on defense, I can make a better argument for those players being on the roster than I can some of those guys we're talking about on offense.
Interesting. My corners that I put up there, I think are the exact same as you, Jeff. I have Mansour Delaney, Noel Williams, and we put on L'Jarius Sneed, Christian Fulton, Kader Kohu, and Jaden Kennedy, all making it because I think they've got the room for it, and I think they're going to want depth. And so I've got 6 corners, and I've got 4 safeties. I've got Chris Roland Wallace at safety and Jaden Hicks at safety, but I'm not married to Jaden Hicks making the roster because he's been pretty disappointing for him. When Steve Spagnuolo flat out say you don't know the defense, like that's pretty telling about what they're thinking of the guy. So I've got 6 corners and 4 safeties, but they do have those kind of hybrids. I mean, Connor and Roland Wallace are kind of hybrids. Sam, where did you
Snead
go?
Too, right? But Snead,
L'Jarius Sneed, I think that'd probably be a good thing for L'Jarius Sneed's extending his career would be for him to be at safety. But Sam, you were telling us that you thought he was working mostly at corner, right?
Well, he hasn't. I mean, in the summer, he was just doing the dry reps behind the group, like not actually participating in the 11s or any of even just the defensive only periods either. So
that's worked for him.
That's
why it works.
He's practicing for the season.
That's it. Right where he left off.
I have 4 true safeties, and I agree with you, Soren. They view Connor as a hybrid. He's a safety, and I think he'll actually start at safety. Shamari Connor, and Alohi Gilman. I think Jaden Hicks will play probably more than he did last year. And then I've got a second undrafted free agent on this list as well, which is Xavier Wampa. I've got on the list as well. He had a good summer. I'm interested to see what he turns out to be with the pads on in St. Joe. Another guy I think who's going to play specials too.
Yeah, and his name from Iowa was one to keep an eye on.
Who was the corner they had last year or earlier in camp? Who was like I forget the guy's name. It was a K. It starts with a K.
Well, they have Elam this year.
No, not K or Elam. It was like 2 Ks. I think it was a K and it has a last name too.
Kevin Knowles, Kevin Knowles. But I think he is mostly a slot guy. He's definitely going to have a path towards making this team. Mostly a slot guy, and I just think they actually finally have that position covered to where Shamari Connor shouldn't even be in the mix at all. And by the way, Knowles was a good special teams guy, and also he's I actually considered him ahead of Kader Kohu. Like Knowles was a harder cut for me.
Do we think that they could just flood this with numbers?
Yes, I think that's possible.
That was my theory too. I don't think they have as many answers there, and they need more numbers to figure out.
This could look like a couple of years ago with the 7 wideouts. Like, well, we'll just keep them all and see if somebody emerges. And
except that it actually would make more sense as defensive backs, because that's actually what the Bengals did whenever the Bengals gave the Chiefs problems. I have long disagreed that the Bengals are some sort of Mahomes truth teller now, but there was a period for over a 2-year period where they gave the Chiefs some fits, and all they did was rotate in these recycled cornerbacks. I mean, like Eli Apple was getting starter-worthy snaps or starter allotment of snaps, and it was just, we'll play someone and then we'll bench them. And we'll just create this competition all year long for 17 games, and we'll bench this guy, then we'll bring him back, we'll bench this guy. And I could see that making sense. I don't know if Steve Spagnuolo has the patience for that because of the complications within his defense, and he wants to layer on as the season progresses. I think it'd be harder here. But I initially actually had 11 defensive backs on this roster and just said, man, they've never kept it up.
Who did you – that's interesting. Who did you –
I had
and who did you add back at the other spot?
I had Knowles on there. And then I had
Took him off and added who in?
I think it was Saint was my last guy on there. But as we've said many times, I mean, if they've got guys who perform, there's other spots you could have. I actually think that the real answer of this, but it's a cop out for this exercise, is there somebody who's not currently on the roster who will be on their 53-man roster, because they've got some depth at certain spots. You know, let's say Cleo Benson or S.A. Pole finished third and the right tackle job. They're the fourth tackle. Somebody else could say, well, that's at least, I mean, Wanye Morris just brought back a late round swap. Oh. Somebody else could say, we could use that guy. What do you need? Well, I mean, look at all the positions we would name if somebody asked the Chiefs, what do you need? What do you got at receiver? What do you got? Do you have a blocking tight end? You know, do you have a running back who can get a first down on third and short? Like, we've got answers to that if the Chiefs could potentially match up with some depth for depth.
I think a defensive lineman could emerge from someplace else, and I actually look at it.
Which one, an edge or an interior player?
You take your pick. I mean, I think either one. If there's somebody that they fancy a little bit, if they had a good draft grade on him, and you know, kind of like, remember the guy they traded for from, was it the Raiders, the LSU defensive tackle that I assume was in town at some point, but never got on the field.
Yeah, who was? That's going to drive me nuts.
Yeah,
big defensive tackle.
Yeah. I mean, I can see something.
He was actually on the 53-man, and just wasn't one of the guys dressing out for the games.
Yeah, I could see some move like that. I also think that this might be a year where, because a lot of these, I mean, the college free agents, they got to really show up. Like the taking your practice squad guys away doesn't happen much anymore. It's almost feels sometimes.
Neil Farrell. That's
Neil Farrell. That was it. Yeah. It's almost like there's a gentleman's agreement amongst the GMs to not be doing that kind of thing to each other, because it just, back in the day, it's like, oh, you're signing 3 guys away and then we cut this and now we got to sign this guy. And it just doesn't happen as much now. But I mean, I think this is a year where they actually, I know, Sam, you said you thought it was this way last year. I didn't feel like it was this to this degree. I think this is worse this year. And so, like, you remember the Orphan 5 or whatever the hell they were calling them? You know, they signed like 5 guys in 13 when Andy Reid was still here. Like Ron Parker, somebody was mentioning to me today. Ron Parker was one of them, and there was a tight end who Duck Dynasty or whatever was what Mitch Holthus was calling him because he had a beard or something. Anyway, I kind of feel like they might be poaching the waiver wire, and that's not where you want to be. You want to be putting guys on the waiver wire that are getting picked up. And so I do think it's I think it's hairier. I think it's scarier this time around that there could be some guys like, wait a minute, they're signing a guy cut by the Titans. Like, what's going on here? You know,
well, it speaks to the holes in the roster, right? I mean, that's kind of Brett Veach was very candid about this going back to the combine about we got a lot of holes to fill. And it takes a while to fill holes when you have expensive quarterbacks and expensive defensive tackles and expensive tight ends. It's just not that easy.
No, I agree. Offensive line, best shape. Worst shape, you put, Sam, you had
worst shape is wide receiver. I just think it's clear cut number one too. And look, I said bigger takeaways are when you go through the depth chart and you're deciding, okay, this guy's a backup, but how does this depth chart look? The spots where they've most evidently improved, I still think, is defensive line. I don't disagree with your assessment that you were keeping a couple defensive line where you're like, man, I wouldn't want to start this guy if I have to with a couple injuries. But it looked a lot worse last year this time of year.
Their top depth, their top players on the defensive line is significantly better than it was.
And their top backups. They're like 7 deep is much better.
Yes.
Which goes back to what I said on a previous podcast. They're better at the line of scrimmage at this time than they were. There's all these other questions that, you know, I'm not discounting those. We've pointed out those other questions. But Brett Veach says they want to get better at the line of scrimmage. They're better at the line of scrimmage at this time than they were going into camp a year ago.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts, Jeff? About it? What you see now?
Work in progress, and It would not be surprising if this team missed the playoffs again. What they look like right now on paper, they are not a playoff team. I think they're a team that could probably grow into that if some of these guys that we're talking about who have been drafted or showed up in free agency play at a high level. But I think on paper, the Broncos and the Chargers look better on paper right now than this team does.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the whole depth of it, yeah. I mean, I hear where you're coming from on that for sure. Any final thoughts, Sam?
No, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that 4 years ago when we were doing this exercise that there's a lot of guys we're cutting that I think there's some fans that are infatuated with. What I'd point out with is that's the traditional trajectory when your quarterback is no longer on a rookie contract. Mm-hmm. This is not a product of the Chiefs getting worse at evaluation. This is a product of the reality of the circumstances. Their stars are getting older, and their stars are still getting more expensive despite getting older.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. But it's critical for them to find the good young cheap talent. And if they could find an undrafted guy that doesn't have to come in and be a star, but can be a quality player, find a couple of those, it gets a lot easier to put this roster together for sure. It gets a lot easier to handle any of your parking lot problems when you know our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Parking lot says a lot about your business. Cracks, potholes, faded striping, damaged concrete can create safety concerns and leave the wrong impression with your customers and clients. Gann Asphalt and Concrete can make that parking lot beautiful again. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot, and our friends at Italian Delight, just a few miles east of Kansas Speedway on State Ave, 8145. You can find them online at ItalianDelightKS.com. Lunch special starting at $10 the first, folks. To bring true New York-style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago, locally owned and operated, it's Italian Delight. Again, find them online at ItalianDelightKS.com. For Jeff Chadiha, for Sam McDowell, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here